You're alright. I'm thinking about the Switch 2, okay? There's a dilemma, isn't there? And the dilemma is this. Mario Kart World looks amazing, but it costs $80. But it looks amazing, right? I mean, the concept of open world Mario Kart is fantastic, and I guarantee you, Nintendo have nailed it. There's no way this game is going to be a disappointment. No way. You're not going to be playing Mario Kart World and thinking, oh, this isn't as good as what the trailer made it look. Not a chance. It's not going to happen, is it? It's going to be fantastic. It's a day one purchase. Easy. Well, easy if you've got the $80, like I said. So, right. Nintendo are charging $80 for Mario Kart World. Are they allowed to do that? Yeah, of course they are. Are people going to buy it? Absolutely they are. But I'm not happy about it. I mean, at this point, I'm asking myself, am I going to buy a Switch 2? The answer is, I don't know. I'll start with the prices, with Nintendo choosing to raise game prices. And I'm going to use the American dollars to talk about it, even though I'm aware, and I'll just mention this briefly, that in 2017, I bought Breath of the Wild for £60, which I think comes to about $80. And that was what? 2017, 8 years ago? So this is my brief acknowledgement that UK gamers and gamers worldwide are going to get doubly shafted, maybe worse, by the prices. But the standard that everyone's talking about is the US $70 to $80 price hike. That's how everyone understands what's going on. I just don't like it. It doesn't sit well with me. Nintendo say they see the value in their games. They look at each game individually and decide what it's worth. And I think it's important to remember that they decide. They could choose to charge anything they want for Mario Kart World. And they're choosing $80. They honestly could charge whatever they like. I reckon they could charge $40. I'm not even joking. Just dramatically drop the price of the game. Imagine if they charged $40 for Mario Kart World. Would they lose money? Absolutely not. They would not lose money. They wouldn't be able to print the cartridges fast enough. Imagine the goodwill they would generate as well by charging $40 for Mario Kart 8, by for no reason at all, just undercutting the prices. They'd still make all the money in the world, I guarantee it. Absolutely. In the words of Gambit, I guarantee. But no, they're choosing. At a time when just trying to stay alive is more expensive than it's ever been. If I were to say to you now, times are a bit hard, you would say that's a bit of an understatement, Mark. Everything's more expensive. Bread is so expensive. You're sitting there, scratching your chin in the supermarket. Do I really need bread this week? Everything's going through the roof. Not even, like rent, electricity, the really expensive things. And Nintendo have at this time decided, yeah, we reckon we can just increase the price of games. I think it's greedy, it's mean-spirited, and I don't think people should be making excuses for it. But having said all that, I don't think a $10 price hike on its own is a deal breaker for me. Like, not every game on the Switch 2 is going to cost $80. Probably just all of Nintendo's first-party games. And I don't buy a lot of those. There isn't a new one coming out every day. And I don't buy all the ones that get released. It's just on principle. But that's not the only thing. So what else? What else about the Switch 2 is getting on my nerves? Well, a few things. I made a list actually, so I don't forget the stuff I want to talk about. Oh, here we go. Switch 2 editions. So I mentioned Breath of the Wild. There's a Switch 2 edition of Breath of the Wild. Okay, what's different? What's new about the Switch 2 version? I think it's got some improved performance, and you have access to some smartphone app that allows you to not bother using game FAQs if you don't want. It's just stuff anyone would hardly care about. Okay, how much? $70. $70 for the Switch 2 version of Breath of the Wild, a game which launched on the Wii U, if you remember. How is the Switch 2 version more expensive than the original version? Doesn't make any sense. $70. Well, that must include the DLC, right? No, that's another $20 if you want the DLC. Ridiculous. What if I already own a copy of Breath of the Wild, like basically everyone who's got a Switch? Okay, you can upgrade for $10. Or if you like, you can get the upgrade for free if you subscribe to Nintendo Online. That's $20 a year, or $50 a year if you want the expansion pack. But subscribing to Nintendo Online doesn't get you all of the Switch 2 upgrades, just the Zelda ones. And I'm not sure what happens if you cancel your subscription. Presumably you lose access. Hopefully, if you lose access to the Switch 2 upgrade, you don't lose access to your save file. Hopefully the save files are compatible with Switch 1 and Switch 2 versions, because that would just be a pain in the ass, wouldn't it? Imagine that. Imagine having to maintain access to a subscription just to keep all of your save file. That would be a pain in the ass. I don't know what the situation is there, because it's a complicated thing, and it would be difficult to explain all that in their little direct, wouldn't it? Even though it was an hour long. But the point is, why is the situation so complicated? It doesn't matter. What's the next thing on my list? I have to switch to bloody versions. Oh yeah, speaking of things being more complicated than they need to be, game key cards. What the hell is this? I mean, let me ask you a question. Do you like the convenience of digital games, or do you prefer the security of physical games? Or would you prefer there was some like halfway middle option, some third option, which basically offers no clear benefit over either one? Well, enter game cards, a cartridge with nothing on it. I don't know whose dream child was this. So now if you buy a game key card, then your ownership of the game is linked both to the physical media and to Nintendo's online servers. The game key card has nothing on it. You still have to download the whole game to your console, but you still also have to use the cartridge to play the game. You still have to be fiddling around with cartridges. I don't understand what's the proposition there. How am I supposed to be excited about game key cards? It's just baffling to me. Bravely Default, Flying Fairer, game key card. Great. What happens when Nintendo shuts down the eShop? If I buy the game key card after they've shut down the Switch eShop, what happens? Can I still access the game that I've bought? I don't know. And you might say, well, why would they shut down the eShop? They always shut down the eShop. Go buy something on your 3DS or your Wii U now. You can't. They've shut down the eShops. So I don't like that. I mean, one advantage of physical games for me is that I don't have to worry about having enough free space on my SD card. But with the game key card, you still have to download the whole game. So I don't understand what the advantage is. Oh, speaking of SD cards, Nintendo said that the Switch 2 is only compatible with EX micro SD cards for some reason, which are way more expensive than the regular ones. Also, that means you can't just take your old SD card out of Switch 1 and plug it into Switch 2, because it won't work. You'll have to buy a new one. It's like they just think their customers are just made of money. I mean, oh God. Right, what's the next thing on my list? Oh, right. Okay, so maybe you can't use your old SD card. But one piece of good news is it looks like you can use your old accessories. Even the old Joy-Cons, they can't clip physically into the Switch 2, but apparently they can pair wirelessly. Same with your old Pro Controller, for example. Apparently you can use it with the Switch 2, which is just as well, because the new one is, as you guessed it, more expensive. It just drives me insane. I mean, what about old games? Okay, the Switch 1 is backwards compatible, but it's using emulation to achieve backwards compatibility, which is not ideal, is it? In fact, there's a small list, a relatively small list, maybe 100 or so games that are not compatible, currently not compatible with the Switch 2. I don't think that's really a big deal. Like, in my mind, that's not so much a big deal. It depends exactly what those 100 games are. But I feel like eventually they'll be patched and they will be compatible. So it's not a massive problem. It's just not as straightforwardly positive. It's not as uncomplicatedly exciting as I would like it to be. And that's Switch 2 in a nutshell for me. I'd like to be excited about it, but there's all this stuff that's just like, why does it have an LCD screen? Why not an OLED? We already have a Switch 1 OLED model, and everyone agrees the OLED is a miles better screen. It's not that much more expensive than an LCD. I mean, what are they going to do? Are they going to release an OLED Switch 2 model in the future? Maybe. Maybe I'm just getting old. Maybe I've been through this new console cycle one too many times, but I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of Nintendo. I'm sick of the way everything's more complicated than it needs to be. It's like they could be quite consumer friendly, but they choose not to be. They choose to lock all of their old classic games behind a subscription model. Why can't I just buy a copy of Super Metroid? Why not? Why isn't that enough? Why? Why is there an LCD screen? Why can you only use EX microSD cards? Why haven't they addressed stick drift? There's a thing called the Hall effect you can apply to joysticks, which makes them resistant to stick drift, and they're choosing not to do that. Why? Why? Why are the Switch 2 versions of old Switch games not at a discount? Why are they more expensive than the original versions? It doesn't make any sense. I want to be excited about it. Like Mario Kart World looks unbelievable. And I would have said Nintendo across the Switch, it's like every time they make a new version of one of their games, it's like the best you've ever seen, you know? Like when Breath of the Wild came out, we're like, this is as good as Zelda's ever been. Super Mario Odyssey, like, wow, this is as good as 3D Mario has ever been. They keep nailing it. They consistently make great stuff. But they also make it hard to get excited about it by making all these odd decisions. So, I don't know. Was there anything else on my list? I feel like I've moaned for long enough. Oh yeah, Switch 2 Welcome Tour. What are they thinking? I cannot express how boring that looks. Is anyone excited for Switch 2 Welcome Tour? If it was packaged with the console, if you just turned your Switch 2 on, booted up for the first time, and it started with the Switch 2 Welcome Tour, I'd be like, what's this? It looks like I'd be mashing buttons trying to skip it, skip. Just want to play some Mario Kart. Switch 2 Welcome Tour. Great, you get to wander around the Switch 2 as a teeny tiny man, exploring how there's magnets inside the Joy-Cons and there's a spring that makes the rumble work and stuff. I'm like, oh great, wow, how exciting. Why would I want to take the Switch 2 virtual tour when I'm holding a Switch 2 in my hands and I can experience what it does by playing games? They've lost their minds. The idea of them saying like, I reckon people will pay $10 for this. Unbelievable. I'd be very interested to see how it sells. I think it will sell because people are going to get a Switch 2 and then they're going to want to buy stuff that you can only experience on the Switch 2. And if it's only $10, they'll buy it just because it's cheap, regardless of what it is, because that's what people do. But not me. And I'm not getting a Switch 2 at launch. I'm just not. I've got a massive Switch 1 backlog, and I don't feel I'm too old for the fear of missing out. It just doesn't affect me. The whole world can play Mario Kart World, and I'll play it when I play it. You know what I mean? I'll buy it secondhand at some point, and Nintendo won't get a penny. Greedy bastards. I just... Come on, Nintendo. I've said this in the past. I said this when I talked about... remember when they released the Mario 3D All-Stars collection, and for whatever reason they decided that they were only going to sell it for, 12 months or something, and then after that it just disappeared, and now you can only buy it at a ridiculously expensive price on the second-hand market. Why do that? Why? You know. So when I was talking about that, I said I expect better from Nintendo. Maybe it's just being naive, but I grew up with Nintendo. My first console was the Nintendo Entertainment System. My first game was the double cartridge Super Mario Bros. And Duck Hunt. It was magical, and I didn't have a Super Nintendo. I had Mega Drive, so I'm not like a Nintendo loyalist. Clearly not. But every console after that, Nintendo 64, GameCube, Wii, you know, all the handhelds, Game Boy Color, DS, you know, I've been with them all the way. But like, as a lifelong Nintendo customer, I'm not feeling very valued. You know, I'm not feeling very respected. I don't feel like Nintendo is appreciating its position and its audience as much as it maybe I don't know. What am I really complaining about? Is all this stuff as bad as I think it is? Or is this just an old man grumbling because rent is so expensive these days and the price of groceries is going up and I don't really have the money in my pocket that I would like? I think that's why it stings so hard. Whatever. I wish I could be excited about it, but I'm just not. I'm not buying a Switch 2 at launch. We'll see. Like I said, the fear of missing out simply doesn't exist with me. Someone told me the other day, or I heard it on a podcast or something, that the PlayStation 5 launched 5 years ago. It's been out for 5 years. I've barely even thought about it. I've had every version of PlayStation 1 through 4. But I just simply don't care. I don't care that I haven't played Horizon Zero Dawn 2 or Spider-Man 2 or God of War 2. You know, it doesn't bother me in the slightest. What? Who cares? It's only video games, isn't it? Thanks for watching. See you next time.